So today's video is gonna be a bit longer than usual because a lot happened. I have a lot to explain. Um, so I'm gonna first begin explaining how my day went, or actually just from start to finish. All right, so today's Monday, the 25th, but today's Monday, the 25th. Um, go over every trade or every stock that I was watching, but Sunday or Saturday, I believe, I made a watch list. I had one, two, three, four, um, four, one, two, three, four stocks on my watch list that I was really watching, and I'll say about five. Um, One stock was on my watch list from the previous week that I didn't take off yet. Okay, so yeah. So after creating my watch list Saturday afternoon, um, I had these stocks on my watch list that I'm going to explain to you. Um, so ticker symbol MKD on Friday, it spiked largely from roughly 91 cent to a high of 169. Um, pulled back. Um, Pulled back and then you know pulled back right here and then close here. Market open or market after hours. Of course, it had a gap up or a spike. Not really a gap spike, but a gap up. So going into pre-market today, um, it opened up red, but I wasn't really paying attention to the price. But after I did my research and everything, which I'll do here. Let me try to move as fast as I can. So I take my time on these videos a little bit too long. But the statistics um, was pretty much saying it had a $35 million float, which was decent for me. Um, pretty pretty high for a $1 stock, but also pretty low because it's a $1 stock. Um, can't remember the news. Um, but the SEC filings and what was it? MKD. The SEC filings. It had it had an offering here that they did back in the end of the year, this December 30th, and they had their offering. I don't think it was right here. Just know they had an offering. Um, I wasn't really looking at. I didn't really read this at all, but this is how I traded it. So I had to go to work pretty early during market hours instead of after market hours like I normally do. But I was trying to trade the safest stock possible and really be smart with my trades because um didn't really want to risk a lot. And market opened and it started tanking. So I chased it a little bit, but I bought 200 shares here, then another 200 here. Excuse me. Then I bought 400 shares here. The reason why I did this is because the stock was moving very slow. And the bid and the ask was practically bulked up. There was a wall on both bid and axes, so it was like I couldn't really determine where the stock was gonna go. But then I started seeing here that it was eventually gonna tank. Um, so I shorted and when I shorted right here, it was just $20 that I was risking, and it was $20 per 10 cent, and that wasn't really worth it to me. I wasn't really taking that size seriously. Then I doubled down on my shares and did 400 shares, which was 40 cent per 10 cent. But then that wasn't serious. That wasn't enough for me neither. And I'm not trying to like say that I'm greedy or, I'm trying to determine my gains. But $40 gain, 2 to 1 risk reward is $80. That just wasn't, I just didn't take it seriously. Then I doubled my shares. And of course, the whole time I'm watching my risk. Every time I'm adding shares, I'm changing my risk because I'm not willing to lose more than 30, $40. So right here, I had 800 shares with a risk of I think my average was around like 30, 31, $1 and 31, 30 or 31 cent. And I think my risk was 135. Um, and then it came crashing down, or not crashing. I had this big pullback right here, and I was up $80. And to be honest, I'm like, I don't really think that's any serious money. Not only that, it's like, I'm just gonna give it more time because it only dropped 10 cent. Um, and I think the more experienced traders can agree with me because red to green was like right here or something. So I'm like, I'm not too far away from red to green, and then it bounced up. So I'm like, okay, let me try to make sure this is um, a trade that I can actually take seriously. So I added another 400 shares. Here I was gonna do 800 to make it 1600 shares, but I'm like, no, that's beyond my risk. So I added another 400. I had 1200 shares shorted right here. Um, my risk was like a few cents, and I'm like, if it bounce, if it doesn't pull back, I want out because I don't want to trade this if it's not gonna go my way. And time was running out. I had to go to work, and you shouldn't really be trading right before you go before you go to work. But I saw the opportunity. I went for it. I was up, but it just didn't take the trade seriously enough, and it started uptrending, and I covered. I closed my software, and and went on with my day. When I checked it again, I noticed it had this big spike. I was glad that I covered, and it came crashing down. I didn't really watch it throughout the rest of the day, but it really didn't. It really didn't provide any greater opportunity, um, today. But not only that, if you look at the hourly chart or the 30-minute chart, you know, I knew I knew investors were, or I knew they were dumping shares here. So to me, um, was worth shorting, but it just didn't go down like I expected to. And I remember, as I was shorting this, I remember Stephen Duck said, "Don't short stocks that are near $1 because it can easily bounce from $1." And not only that, the I think it's the SEC or something like that, or the SEC. Somebody, they don't allow um, stocks to be under $1 in the Nasdaq. So I'm like, I remember that, and I'm like, okay, this stock will most likely not go down under $1 because in order for them to stay listed, they have to be above $1. So I remember that, and I was glad that I covered. That gave me more conviction to cover. So after that, the next stock that I was watching that was on my watch list, and I wrote everything down because ticker symbol MKD had an offering. It had overhead resistance. Excuse me. It had a 35-minute float. I wrote this all down on a piece of paper. Now ticker symbol EXPR. But for that trade, I only lost $20. I stuck to my risk, stuck to the plan, and to me, in my eyes, it was a good trade. Staying safe. Um, Ticker symbol E EXPR. I wrote down it's that every spike gets sold into. It has a 54 million flow and couldn't find an offering, but every spike gets sold into. So looking at the yearly chart here, you see that it's a consistent downtrending stock. And every time it bounces, it comes back down, can never break a previous high, pulls back some more, tries to bounce, fails. But this time it breaks even higher, but fails again, bounces, fails again. And that's what I was anticipating with this stock today. So the first green day right here, I didn't think it was going to keep going up. But of course, it had a second green day. Um, and here's the second green day. Um, so, of course, after hours on Friday, it was uptrending, pre-market uptrending. I really couldn't focus on the stock because of my situation, but it uptrended, pulled back, and kind of like bounced a little bit, but really consolidated, never hit any highs. So this is going to stay on my watch list to see if it's going to continue to uptrend, and then I'm going to possibly short it. There's only 17,000 shares left on available for Interactive Brokers. So if it gives me an opportunity or a first red day, that's when I'll take it. But if not, I'm not really fucking with it. Um, MKD had a lot of shares to short, but yeah, that bitch wasn't going down. Um, V VYNE. Um, I kind of like this stock. Um, the yearly chart was bad. It was just a downtrending stock. Never really any real bounce except for this right here. But I had wrote on my on my notes. VYNE has a flow of 141 million. It has overhead resistance and an offering of 27 million shares. Um, I think it's I think they can dump up to 27 million shares or not, but let me look it up here. VYNE. VYNE. Let me look for it here. So it had two offerings in June. These motherfuckers did two offerings. So 27 million shares, like I said, at 185 per share. This was when the stock was at um, $2.13 per share, um, and that's how much money they made. Uh, and then this other offering was the same thing. Of the price was at the stock was at this price when they did it. Um, I guess this is not. I guess the last one that I just showed you was a update, but yeah, they had an offering of 27 million shares at 183. So when I think I when I look back at the yearly chart back in June, yeah, right here in June, you can say they probably dumped some here or here, but not no 27 million for sure. So you already know they still had some shares available to dump. So market open, um, it spiked, and I looked this one up, uh, like around like 4 or 5 a.m. I couldn't go to sleep last night, so I was like up, just looking at stocks and shit and doing research. But it was up quite a lot, and of course, during pre-market, it's fading, um, and then market opens. You see here, it just fades, and then bounces. Um, I don't know if it hit red for the day. Let me see. It opens. Nah, of course it didn't. But after hours, it should be going into the reds. Hold on, let me see. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong stock. So after, by the end of the day, it was still up 85 cents. Well, it's still green for the day, but we'll see when market opens tomorrow if it's gonna be red. So I'll keep this on my watch list as well. But I know for sure they still have shares available to dump. I'm hoping that they do a spike and then it just fades, and I'll short into the second green day, um, and just go from there. But there was opportunity. This stock was probably a better, not really much of a better stock to short than MKD that I shorted, but MKD really didn't give me the opportunity that I was looking for, and I gave it way too much time. But I saved the best for last because this shit was amazing. While I was at work, everybody was talking about this shit. GameStop. GameStop had, and I wrote this down too. It was a higher price stock, $60 per share, um, with a 64 million float. They recently did an offering at $16.35 per share slash unit, but it had no overhead resistance. So a higher price stock didn't bother me. The 46 million float at the time, it didn't really register in my head that that was a low float compared to this price stock, but that was a good thing too. It had no overhead resistance, which is even better or just as good, but it had an offering sitting. So, um, if I can get to this damn offering, game, GameStop, and they're going out of business. So why not? Why not make as much money as they can before they go out of business by dumping shares onto their investors? But earlier last month in December, they had an offering. It's not at really any set price. Oh, they didn't have an offering at $16. They set this offering when the stock was at $16.35. But they can dump up to $100 million worth of shares onto their investors, especially when their flow um, is rotating. I wonder how many times did their float rotate. It was 46 million. Let's see how many times they rotated float. Their dollar value today was $14.7 billion. That's how much money ran through this company today alone. Um, they traded 177 million shares, um, but their average is 19 million. So they rotated their flows 177 divided by 46. 3 point almost 4 times. And dumped, yeah, I don't think they dumped all their shares, but they could have dumped up to $100 million, um, adding to the share count. So this shit's crazy to me, but let me look at the chart here. But today's the 25th. One thing I wanted to show you, the yearly chart, no overhead resistance whatsoever. Beautiful. A beautiful yearly chart. No overhead resistance, but it's not a former runner, which is a bad thing. Oh, they give dividends. Wow. One time in 2 years. Ridiculous. Um, but no, it's not a former runner, which is a bad thing, but it has no overhead resistance. Um, a week ago, this stock was at $16, had a minor up $2, and kept going sideways. And I guess they were pumping up the stock last week, and you see it just slowly uptrending. And then today was its big day where where let me go a little further back. So it doubled in its share price, but clearly they can manipulate it even higher and make way more money. But I guess it uptrending here, it wasn't enough for them because you can clearly see right here, uh, they're dumping shares. No stock just runs up just like that and come crashing like that. There was manipulation on the upside and on the downside. So they dumped some here. You can clearly see they probably dumped some here as well. Um, and then today during pre-market, it was uptrending. They probably dumped some a little bit more. And then when the market opened, it got halted somewhere around here. It got halted Right here, you can clearly see it's going sideways with no volume. It got halted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 times today, 8, 9. And then the news was, I was reading the news, they're such finessers. They're like, oh, um, GameStop has increased by 100%. They're moving so much that they're getting temporarily halted because of orders not able to get filled or some shit like that. And I'm like, bitch, you lying. It's not that orders can't get filled. It's it's moving so much because they're dumping their shares and manipulating their stock. Then even the news is lying. They're writing false articles. They're writing articles making false statements about the company. But it went from $16 to 156 in 1 week. So I don't. I mean, let me see how many times that is that. That's 160 divided by, we'll call it 120. That's 8 times their fucking money. And then all in one day, really roughly 30 minutes, it loses half its value in 30 fucking minutes. Um, how the fuck does a company do that? Loses half its value in 30 minutes. And that's because they manipulated it by dumping all their shares up to $100 million. So you can clearly see it spikes up all the way, come crashing down. I was literally watching it on my phone, and they dumped so many shares that it went to red. It literally went to red. It went red. So all its gains that it made today, it went under that, and it went to a low of $61.13 because they dumped that many shares. So anybody who was riding this wave or trying to invest probably lost all their money and more. And anybody shorting, if there was shares available to short, I hope you got a good entry. I wish I was watching the level twos because the level twos and the time and sells, and of course the chart itself would tell you um, where the manipulation is when they start the manipulation. But overall, I was happy that I was able to watch this and witness this, and I only lost $20 for the day. So hoorah to me.